I love hanging out with them and spending time with them. And fortunately, we have had like lots of, visits along the way of this emptiness.
Julia Roberts was the biggest movie star in the world. Her name alone could green-light a film. Studios handed her millions, and audiences handed her their trust. Then, at the height of it all, she started saying no. Not to bad scripts, to the kind of roles most actors wait a lifetime for. People assumed Hollywood had moved on from her. They were wrong. Something happened on a film set in Mexico that quietly changed everything. And now, at 58, Julia Roberts has finally said the words out loud. What she walked away from will surprise you. This is the full story. The smile that built an industry. When people try to explain just how big Julia Roberts became, they usually start with Pretty Woman. The film arrived in 1990 and turned a 22-year-old actress into something Hollywood had not seen in a long time, a true movie star. She was far more than a familiar face. Her name gave studios confidence. Her presence gave audiences a reason to buy a ticket. Once that kind of power appeared, everyone in the business wanted a piece of it. What followed through the 1990s was a remarkable run. Steel Magnolias had already shown that she could handle emotional material before Pretty Woman changed everything. Then came My Best Friend's Wedding in 1997, Notting Hill in 1999, and Runaway Bride that same year. One hit followed another, and soon, Julia Roberts no longer felt like the name of a single actress. It felt like a genre of its own. By the end of the decade, she had become what the industry calls a green light. Once she joined a project, the studio had enough reason to move forward. Producer Edward Zwick, who had worked with her in the early 1990s, said it plainly. Her name alone helped convince Universal to finance a film it otherwise would have ignored. That says a great deal about where she stood. This was not ordinary fame. This was real power. Very few actors in Hollywood history ever reached that level. Even so, she had already begun to understand what came with it. Long before later interviews in British Vogue or the Wall Street Journal, she had spoken about the trade-off in clear and simple terms. She once said that she could have been a dental hygienist and lived without anything painful being written about her. But that was not the life she had chosen. She knew fame would place her under a microscope, and she had accepted that from the beginning. Those words did not come from someone shocked by celebrity. They came from someone who had seen the price clearly and kept thinking about it. By the late 1990s, Julia Roberts was not simply a star. She had become a force large enough to shape the business around her. And once a person reaches that point, a deeper question begins to rise. Are you in charge of that machine, or has it started shaping you? She was about to face that question in the sharpest way possible, through a troubled Shakespeare film and a man who never sent back her roses. The Oscar she walked away from on purpose. This is the part many people still do not know. And looking back now, it explains a lot about who Julia Roberts really was. The year is 1991. Pretty Woman has already made her the brightest new name in Hollywood. She is attached to a film called Shakespeare in Love, where she is set to play Viola. Her involvement is so valuable that Universal agrees to finance the film after passing on it earlier. The moment she joins, the money appears. Producer Edward Zwick soon runs into a problem. Roberts has one specific actor in mind for Shakespeare, Daniel Day-Lewis. She does not want chemistry tests or long casting discussions. In her mind, he is the right choice, and she believes he will say yes. According to Zwick's own account, she even has her assistant send him 24 roses with a card that says, "Be my Romeo." She then flies to London to speak to him herself. He refuses. Day-Lewis is already committed to In the Name of the Father with Jim Sheridan, and that decision is final. The turning point comes right there. Once he says no, Roberts seems to lose her connection to the film. Zwick brings in other actors and begins chemistry reads. Paul McGann is tested opposite her. Roberts is already in costume when the reading happens, but the spark is gone. Zwick later writes that there was no magic. He says the issue was not the script and not McGann. In his view, Roberts had already drifted away from the project. She had even stopped working on her English accent. In every important way, she had already checked out. By the next morning, she is gone. She flies back to the United States. The production shuts down, and the studio, after spending millions on sets, costumes, and pre-production, is left to absorb the damage. Years later, the film returns in a new form. In 1998, Miramax revives Shakespeare in Love. Gwyneth Paltrow plays Viola. She wins the Academy Award for Best Actress, and the film takes Best Picture. If Julia Roberts had stayed with the project, she almost certainly would have been the one standing there to accept that honor. What matters most, though, is the choice itself. Zwick was careful when he looked back on it. He did not describe her as cold or cruel. He described her as a frightened 24-year-old, and that distinction matters. At that stage, this was not yet a carefully formed philosophy. It was an instinct. Somewhere deep down, she knew that if the conditions were wrong, she would not be able to give the performance she wanted, so she walked away. That instinct stayed with her. Over time, it became more deliberate. It also became more expensive. First woman to make $20 million, and the price that came with it. By the year 2000, Julia Roberts had reached the highest point available. Erin Brockovich opened on March 17, 2000, and what followed came quickly. She won the Academy Award for Best Actress. She also took home the Golden Globe, the BAFTA, the Critics' Choice Award, and the Screen Actors Guild Award for the same performance. At the same time, she became the first woman in Hollywood history to earn a $20 million salary for a single film. That put her alongside the biggest male stars in the business, including Tom Cruise, Tom Hanks, and Mel Gibson. Reportedly, her agent made the argument in direct terms: why should the men make more? That achievement meant far more than a large paycheck. The figure mattered, of course, because $20 million in 2000 was enormous. Yet the deeper meaning was impossible to miss. Hollywood had finally acknowledged, in the language it values most, that Julia Roberts stood at the very top of the industry. Contracts said it. Deal memos said it. The numbers said it. She was 32 years old. By then, she had already done everything a star could hope to do. She had the Oscar. She had the box office success. She had the cultural standing. During the 1990s alone, she appeared in 17 films. Then, by 2003, her salary climbed even higher to $25 million for Mona Lisa Smile. Still, something important had been present in her thinking for years. She often said, "I'm just an ordinary person who has an extraordinary job." At first glance, that sounds modest. Yet it was much more than that. It reflected the way she understood herself. Fame was never the final goal in her eyes. It was simply the conditions surrounding the work. She also spoke in a more pointed way about the burden that came with it. She said she did not think she had fully realized that the cost of fame was open season on every moment of her life. That is a striking thing to hear from someone who had become one of the most photographed and most discussed actresses of her generation. Even at the peak, she was still measuring the cost. Then, during the filming of a 2001 movie in Mexico, she met a cinematographer. From that moment on, the equation of her life began to change. The decision that changed everything. In 2001, Julia Roberts met Danny Moder on the set of The Mexican, where he was working as a camera operator. He was not a celebrity, and he was not one of the powerful names people usually talk about in Hollywood. He was a skilled professional who came in, did his work well, and stayed out of the spotlight. Even so, meeting him changed something deep in Roberts. She later described it as a seismic shift in her life. She also said that marrying him was the best decision she ever made. They got married on July 4, 2002, at her property in Taos, New Mexico. After that, family life moved quickly. Their twins, Hazel and Phineas, were born on November 28, 2004. Then Henry arrived in June 2007. In less than 3 years, Roberts became the mother of 3 children, and that changed the center of her life. Her ambition did not disappear. It simply moved towards something more personal and more important to her. She explained this clearly in her January 2024 interview with British Vogue, and it remains the clearest description she has ever given for why she slowed down. She said, "The luckiest aspect of my work life and family life is that the success of my work life came earlier. So by the time I had the success of my family life and had a husband and children who wanted to stay at home, I had been working for 18 years. And so I felt that I had the luxury. I didn't have to pick one or the other. It was easy to pause work life to nurture my home life." That idea matters because it explains everything that came next. She did not step back because she had been cornered or forced into a choice. She stepped back because she had already built an extraordinary career, and that gave her the freedom to protect the life she wanted at home. She had the money, the reputation, and the security to make that decision on her own terms. She made that feeling even clearer when she said, "To be allowed the luxury of staying home and being with my family, I had a deep gratitude for that time." She also said, "I have a sense of great pride in being home with my family and considering myself a homemaker." Those words reveal something simple and powerful. Roberts did not treat those years as a pause filled with frustration. She saw them as meaningful years. She valued being present. She valued building a home. And she spoke about that life with gratitude and pride. The years of no. By the mid-2000s, Julia Roberts had started doing something that was deeply unusual in Hollywood. She started saying no. She was not only passing on weak projects or forgettable roles. She was turning down strong offers, major films, and opportunities that most actors spend their whole careers hoping to get. A source close to her told US Weekly that she was turning down films so she would not be away from her family for long stretches of time. That detail gets to the heart of it. The real problem was not quality. The problem was distance. Long shoots, months away from home, and the constant strain of being a working parent separated from 3 young children made those jobs too costly in a way that had nothing to do with money. Roberts explained her thinking in the same British Vogue interview. She said, "Here's the thing. If I'd thought something was good enough, I would have done it. But I also had 3 kids in the last 18 years. That raises the bar even more because then it's not only, is this material good? It's also the math equation of my husband's work schedule and the kids' school schedule and summer vacation." That phrase, the math equation, says a lot. It shows how practical the decision really was. This was not some vague feeling about balance. It was daily life. It was calendars, school terms, work commitments, and the rhythm of a household with 3 children. Roberts was not speaking in abstractions. She was describing a system, and every role had to fit inside it. Once you understand that, the weight of every no becomes much clearer. During those years, she was still one of the few actresses who could command the biggest roles in the business. These were leading parts, huge paychecks, and films that could have added even more to her legacy. Each time she turned one down, she was walking away from enormous money and from roles that might have stayed in public memory for decades. She knew exactly what those choices meant. Even so, she kept making them, again and again. She chose the shape of family life she wanted. She chose to be there for ordinary days, school routines, and the moving parts of home. And from everything she has said publicly, she did it with calm certainty and without regret. What stepping back actually looked like. She appeared in Ben is Back in 2018, a quiet but deeply painful drama opposite Lucas Hedges. Then, in 2022, she led the Starz limited series Gaslit, playing Martha Mitchell, the outspoken wife of Nixon's Attorney General John Mitchell. The performance earned her an Emmy nomination. That same year, she starred in Ticket to Paradise opposite George Clooney, a warm and easy romantic comedy that brought in more than $170 million worldwide. In 2023, she took the lead in Sam Esmail's Leave the World Behind for Netflix, a tense apocalyptic thriller filled with dread, sharing the screen with Mahershala Ali and Ethan Hawke. What stands out is how different those projects are from one another. One was a prestige limited series about a real political figure. One was a light and crowd-pleasing reunion with one of her most famous co-stars. One was a bold and unsettling film about the end of the world. Taken together, they show a clear pattern. These were careful choices. They came from someone who had become highly selective and who seemed to be asking a much sharper question about her career. What is truly worth leaving home for? That question became even clearer in October 2024, when she narrated the audiobook of Lisa Marie Presley's posthumous memoir, From Here to the Great Unknown, which was completed by Presley's daughter, Riley Keough. Presley had died in January 2023, and the memoir offered a raw and deeply personal account of a life marked by both fame and pain. Roberts narrated most of the book, while Keough read the most intimate sections. Roberts later said, "I was so moved by Lisa Marie's incredible memoir. It was a real privilege to give voice to her wild and beautiful life." The audiobook went straight to the top of Audible's bestseller charts as soon as it was released. And that project says a lot. There was no press tour built around her, no red carpet moment, no campaign centered on her image. There was only her voice, carrying a story that belonged to someone else. In a period when many people said she had stepped away, that choice may reveal more than anything else on the list. It shows where her priorities had moved. The work mattered most. The noise around it mattered less. By that point, the new model was easy to see. She had redefined success. The focus was no longer on doing more. The focus was on doing what felt worth it. Then, in 2025, that approach led her to one of the boldest moves of her later career. The biggest swing of her late career. In August 2025, Julia Roberts arrived at the Venice Film Festival for After the Hunt, directed by Luca Guadagnino. She played Alma, a Yale professor drawn into the center of a campus sexual assault allegation. It was the kind of role that demanded patience, control, and a willingness to sit inside uncertainty for the full length of the film. Alma is not easy to judge, and Roberts had to hold the audience in that tension from beginning to end. Le Monde described her as shining in the film. Guadagnino openly called it one of the great performances of her career. The executive director of the Gotham Awards said she gave a radiant, monumental performance that enhances her already remarkable career. She was paid $20 million for the role. The film itself cost somewhere between $70 million and $80 million to make. And this is where the story stops being neat. After the Hunt opened in limited release on October 10, 2025, and quickly collapsed at the box office. It earned just $3.2 million domestically and $9.1 million worldwide. Against that budget, the result was a major commercial failure. Reviews also landed in a rough place. The film currently sits at 38% on Rotten Tomatoes. Even critics who praised Roberts often did so while criticizing the movie around her. That matters, and it should be said plainly. The film did not connect with audiences in a commercial way. The studio took a real loss. There is no need to soften that. What matters just as much, though, is the choice she made in taking it on. In 2025, Roberts committed to the biggest creative risk of her later career. She signed on with an auteur director. She stepped into difficult material with real cultural weight. She took a role built around moral uncertainty and stayed fully inside it. Then, when the film failed to land, she and Guadagnino still appeared at the Gotham Awards in December 2025 to accept their visionary tribute. They did it with warmth and humor, the kind that usually comes from people who know they made the work they truly wanted to make. At the ceremony, Roberts said, "One of my biggest dreams was to collaborate with Luca Guadagnino. And now I've done it once, I just want to keep doing it." That line says almost everything. It does not sound like someone trying to hold on to relevance. It sounds like someone who already knows what kind of career she wants and is living it on her own terms. I rewrote it with the heading kept, the details preserved, and the flow tightened so each sentence leads naturally into the next. What she's actually been telling us the whole time. In 2024, she said something that should have ended the debate right there. It was calm, direct, and easy to understand. The success of my work life came earlier. So by the time I had the success of my family life, I had been working for 18 years. I felt that I had the luxury. It was easy to pause work life to nurture my home life. That does not sound confused. It does not sound torn. It sounds like a woman who had already reached the top, looked at what she had built, and then chose what mattered more to her. She had the career people dream about. She had the money to make a real choice. And she decided that her marriage and her 3 children were worth more than staying on the same treadmill. Once you see that clearly, the whole story starts to fit together. The choice in 1991 to walk away from Shakespeare in Love was not some random early stumble. Yes, she was only 24, and yes, fear was part of it. But there was something else there too. She already understood that doing something badly could feel worse than not doing it at all. That instinct stayed with her. Then came the years in the 2000s when she kept saying no. People like to turn that into a story about the industry moving on, but her own life points in a different direction. She was the one stepping away from the industry's demands. She was the one choosing school schedules over giant paychecks. She was the one deciding that more money did not automatically mean a better life. That same choice keeps showing up in the work she did later. Her filmography in the 2010s and 2020s feels selective because it was selective. It was not the result of fading relevance. It was not some slow drift into the background. She simply stopped showing up for work that was not worth leaving home for. That makes the pattern much easier to read. She did not disappear. She became careful. She gave her time to projects that felt worthy of it. Then came After the Hunt in 2025. Commercially, it did not connect in the way some had hoped. Yet even there, the deeper truth stayed the same. When she stood at the Gotham podium and spoke about it as a dream realized, she made her own view of the moment unmistakable. The box office was one thing. The meaning it held for her was something else entirely, and that meaning was what mattered to her. She has also explained fame in a way that opens this whole story even further. At one point, she described it as becoming open season on every moment of your life. That is a hard sentence, and it tells you exactly how she experienced the machinery around celebrity. Then she described her career as an extraordinary job, held by an ordinary person. Put those thoughts together, and her worldview becomes easier to understand. She never gave herself over to the full fantasy of Julia Roberts in the way the culture wanted her to. She accepted the work. She respected the gift of it. She also kept hold of the private self underneath it. That private self wanted a family. that private self, valued a life that could still feel real. That private self believed she had every right to want less than the market kept trying to hand her. And that is why one line matters more than almost anything else she has said on the subject. In British Vogue, she put it plainly, "To be allowed the luxury of staying home and being with my family, I had a deep gratitude for that time." Most people read that line, quoted it, and kept moving. They should have stopped there. The whole answer is sitting inside those words. There is no performance in them. There is no false modesty. There is no vague attempt to sound noble. What you hear instead is gratitude from someone who understood exactly how rare that freedom was. Because that kind of freedom is the real rarity in Hollywood. Success is rare, of course, but it still follows a known path. Fame is rare too, though it remains the thing the industry keeps chasing. Real freedom is harder to find. Real freedom means the industry can still want you, still pay you, still build a future around your name. And you can look at all of that and decide you want a different shape for your life. Real freedom means having access to everything the system can offer and still feeling no pressure to keep taking it. Real freedom means being able to step back, stay home, be present with your family, and feel deep gratitude instead of regret. That is what she has been telling us the whole time. The signs were never hidden. They were there in the early walk away. They were there in the years of refusal. They were there in the carefully chosen roles that came later. They were there in the way she talked about fame, in the way she talked about work, and most of all, in the way she talked about home. The public kept looking for mystery, because mystery is more exciting than clarity. But clarity was always available. She built an extraordinary career. Then she used that career to buy herself something far more valuable than another hit. She bought herself the right to live the life she actually wanted. If you want, I can do the same for the next chapter in exactly this style.